core exercises go, this is quite an advanced one, but it may also be seen as a gateway exercise to all the other core exercises you can do. So by learning how to perform the hollow exercise, all other core exercises should be a lot easier and more manageable for you to perform. Now to start with, we're going to split the core, upper core and lower core. I'm going to focus on the upper core first. So if you're thinking of a crunch or a sit-up, a lot of people think about lifting their shoulders, and that is a kind of byproduct of the core engagement, but it's not where we want the focus to be. It can cause people issues over time by trying to strain and cause tension in their shoulders and neck. Our focus should be the core engagement itself. And to think about this, we're going to think about a bicep curl. When you want to lift the weight with your bicep, you contract the bicep and think about pulling that weight upwards using the muscles here, rather than thinking about getting your hand to your shoulder. We want to do the same here, where we're thinking about the core doing all the work to lift the upper body up, rather than trying to get the shoulders off the floor. It may seem a minimal difference, but if you can focus on that contraction rather than the movement, it's going to help over time, because the core is a lot harder to focus on and engage compared to many other muscles because of where it's placed and how it functions. In order to engage the upper core, we're going to drive our spine down into the floor whilst contracting the core muscles, and we're going to think of those core muscles bringing the ribs closer to the belly button. So if my rib cage is here, my belly button's there, the distance between them is going to close up by that contraction of those core muscles here, okay? So that's what we're looking for here. And as you can see already, there's a byproduct of those shoulders and heads starting to lift. And if you've got an arch in the back, that should dissipate when you engage the core, driving down here. So I'm driving up and engaging there. Once you can feel that upper core engagement where those ribs are driving down, we're going to go back to the bicep in terms of you can isometrically contract your bicep so there's no current movement but the muscle is contracting. Then you're going to pull up with the bicep. It's the same with the upper body. So I'm engaging that upper core, driving it down, engaging. Like I did here, I flex at the elbow, I'm going to flex at the spine using my core. So I am now lifting up, but not from rounding my shoulders and neck. I'm flexing at the spine now. I've got that core engagement. So my core muscles here are causing flexion at the spine instead of me using my shoulders and neck to lift off the floor. For the lower core, we're trying to think of a similar scenario here. So if we go back to that lying down position, I've got an arch back right now. And what I want you to think about is your genitals and your belly button. So rather than the rib cage and the belly button, we're going genitals, and you're thinking about genitals coming closer to your belly button. That distance between the two is getting smaller. So up and down, I'm tucking up, and you can see there's that pelvic tilt. So I'm tilting the hips upwards, removing any gap underneath, and again I can contract my lower core when doing so, isometrically contract here whilst tucking up to hold that position. Establishing that lower body contraction is really key. So tucking those hips up, thinking about genitals, the belly button, big brace here, and I've got that core engagement. This is the same isometric contraction we were talking about earlier with the upper core, just with the lower area. Now unlike the upper core where I was flexing at the spine, there's no real movement here. This remains an isometric contraction, but provides the core engagement for our legs to move in and out without an extension of the spine. So if I was to move my leg outwards, it may cause my back to arch. The isometric contraction of the lower core should prevent that by tucking those hips up, the back stays flat to the floor, muscles engaged, my core's doing the work, and my back is just flat and driving into the floor. Being able to engage the upper and lower core takes time, so be patient with that and really work on making sure you get in the right engagement before you move on to these next steps. Now the hollow position itself will be the hardest point we get to today, where we've got the toes pointed, the arms reaching out, I'm engaging that core and lifting up into that hollow position, but we are going to build into that. So we're bringing in the limbs. So arms and legs, we're going to start with just the arms. So I want you to start in this tucked position, like so, where we're engaging the core, the spine is flexing, my lower core is holding those knees off the floor like so. I'll refer to this as a lying tuck position. I can really feel the core engaged in this position, and holding this position over time like a plank is really going to work your core.
So this may be where you want to start first of all. What we're going to do from our tuck position when you're comfortable here is slowly use the limbs to build out into that hollow position. But doing that takes time. So we're going to start with the upper body and the arms, which is the easier of the two. Now all you have to do here is practice keeping the arms straight and taking them overhead without losing the form. So if my shoulders drop down because I can't keep it engaged anymore, then I need to bring it back and find that position. I could keep the upper core engaged whilst the arms went out. It may be short at first before you need to come back in and re-engage, but eventually over time you'll be able to build out and find that you can get further and further as you go for these almost crunch reps or reverse reps, because we're going outwards then back in, until you can eventually hold your hands right overhead. So you shouldn't be able to see your hands when you're in this upper hollow position. Once you feel comfortable with the arms going overhead, we can start with the legs. So bringing it back into our tuck position, practice taking the legs out. You can do this one at a time to start. So can you get one leg straight out whilst keeping that lower core engaged, back flat to the floor? If you can take one out at a time, you can then build it into taking both legs out at once. A lot harder, so you may want to start with smaller movements at first before you go for that hold position when you're out. Finally, we're going to look to combine the two. So back to that tuck position again. Always good to start in a tuck, and then we're going to start extending out and then back in. Again, we can do reps here first of all to build into these exercises before we get into that full hollow position here. Now the hollow doesn't necessarily end in that position, because once you've established a hollow, we can change the curvature of the body to make it even harder by having more of a core contraction. So let me show you again here. I'm in my tuck, I'm going to take it out. I've got my arms above my head, I've got my legs pointed, and I'm going to really squeeze up with the core. My arms are still overhead, my feet are a bit higher, but I'm in that nice bowl shaped position, and this is the most advanced hollow that I can perform at the top here. So once you've established your initial hollow from that lying tuck position, you can then try and really engage the core, lift up a bit more into that bigger curve. Whether you're working on the upper, lower, or full hollow, it's easy to lose your position and lose the core engagement. So a quick demo of that would look like this. If I'm trying to extend outwards, my back arches, so there's now a gap under my back. You may still feel like you can do the exercise, but you may be putting pressure on the back and not using the core as much, even though you're mimicking a similar position. And you'll feel it because your core is extended. So this can even happen in a tuck, and I'm reaching over, I've lost it here, or lower body, I've arched here, and you can feel that my core is extended instead of tucked up and flexing back so. And that's okay, that's just something you need to be mindful of and try and feel if it's happening or not, because all you need to do is reset and re-engage, or if you find it keeps happening, then you may need to go a couple of steps back and rework the steps that we've already covered, build your core strength up a bit more before you then move back into those exercises and progress further with the hollow.